YouTubers, this is Music Store here, and this is my review of James Bond's episode number 6, finally off of one hand. And this movie is a very, how do you put this? This is a very highly contested Bond movie in terms of, with this movie, there is absolutely no middle ground. You either like it or you hate it. And a lot of people I've seen review this or have talked about this on Facebook absolutely loathe this movie. But let's get into it. I watched it, and actually as a kid, like I remember watching this about 8 or 9 years old. I actually personally don't mind this movie. So here's the review of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Released December 18th, 1969, directed by Peter Hunt, and it grossed $87.4 million at the box office. Now, to some of you who are looking at that and saying $87.4 million, like, where does that rank? Let's put it to you this way. From Russia with Love grossed $78 million worldwide. From Russia with the Love, or wait a minute, no, made $60 million. From Russia with Love made $78. Goldfinger made $124. Thunderball made $141.2 million, and You Only Live Twice made $111.6 million, and this one made, as I said, $87.4 million. Runtime for this movie is 2 hours and 22 minutes, which is the longest Bond movie to date, I believe. I'm not sure if any Bond ever came close to 2 hours and 22 minutes. Another Eon production with Broccoli and Saltzman producing this, and there was one big change that happened after Diamonds Are Forever. Sean Connery refused to play James Bond in this film. Absolutely flat out refused, wanted to do other things, and so for the first time ever, you get a new James Bond, who is George Lazenby in his only Bond role. And yeah, I'll get into this. George Lazenby, after this movie, his agent and him did a little talking and all that, and said that James Bond in the 70s, that sort of Bond is outdated and would never sell in the 70s, which actually he isn't true, because it had probably bigger paydays in the 70s than it did in the 60s. But another big thing is about this is 1969. A lot of people, when they rate this movie, don't think 1969 was an absolute shitty year for cinema. It had some absolutely horrendous movies that sold, and not many, to my recollection, not many movies made a killing at the box office in '69. It was a terrible year for cinema, probably one of the worst in cinema history. Which, compared to nowadays, I think I'd take 1969 over nowadays, because it's pretty bad. But let's get into the movie. On Her Majesty, and this is probably going to be one of my longer reviews, because there is so much to cover in this, in terms of scenes, but it stars George Lazenby as James Bond in his only role as Bond, like I mentioned. Diana Riggs as Tracy. Telly Savalas is Blowfeld. Now, to the younger people, or people who do not know who Telly Savalas is, back in the 1960s, early 70s, was a huge name out there. He did war movies, he did westerns, he did, I'm not sure, did Telly Savalas play Kojak? I'm trying to remember, I can't remember if he did, but he was a bald actor, and he brought sort of the first big name into James Bond. Like, it made Connery. Could you imagine Sean Connery versus Telly Savalas? Would have been a great fucking fight. But Okay, the plot to this. Bond befriends Draco and his daughter Tracy as they hunt down Blowfeld and his plot to control the world. Pretty self-explanatory there. Now, memorable scenes. The opening shows a new Bond who saves a girl and makes a remark saying, now this wouldn't happen to the old guy. Sort of making a chop at it. But there's just one problem I have with this, and it's the only problem I had through the entire movie. I'm not sure if it's when they put it to DVD or what happened. It just looks like some parts it's so sped up. I'm just not sure about that. The Eon vid, like the Eon vid to this, I absolutely love the song. To honor Majesty's Secret Service, the boom, like just that great bass part. And also another thing about it, it showed clips from the first 5 Bond films in the beginning, like showed Bond girls, and then a scene previous showed Bond going through his desk and showed stuff from the previous 5 Bond films, which worked really good. Bond meets Tracy, who is the girl he saved on the beach. He goes to a casino or whatever, meets her, fights some guys from the beginning, and then, like typical Bond, horn dog, makes love to her, and everything's good with the world. Then after this, Bond's kidnapped, and Draco starts talking to Bond. Draco is a construction guy, sort of crime syndicated, sort of mafia-like, not as high up as Blowfeld, but he becomes very important in this, and then they start talking about his daughter and all that and everything, and then Blowfeld sort of mentions that he wants, or not Blowfeld, Draco mentions he wants Bond to marry his daughter, which he'd give him $1 million in gold bullion if he did. Then it shows Draco's birthday scene, which shows Tracy there as well. It's sort of like Running of the Bulls type style. Then it goes to a whole part of Bond trying to court the girl, get her to fall in love with him. It's a short scene, it's not that bad. Then it goes to this lawyer. Then Bond finally finds out that it's a lawyer in Switzerland who could lead him to Blowfeld, which he goes, he searches his office for information about Blowfeld and all that. And had this great little safe cracker device that you see this blonde guy, scruffy looking, sends it up through this little bucket thing up to the window and all that. And this guy becomes important later in the movie, but he uses it to crack the safe, and it's... Oh, and they showed Playboy in this, which is actually, I think, the first showing of Playboy in a Bond film. But also, one more thing about this is, I don't know if Ford and the guys who were doing James Bond filming had a contract, but you see a Mercury Cougar in this movie, and Ford cars, which is kind of shocking. But then it gets into Bond's family crest and sort of explains, and this becomes important in later Bond films, is the Bond family crest reads, "The world is not enough," which is one of my favorite Bond lines of all time. But Blofeld's base is on top of a mountain in the Swiss Alps. All patients in it is women and all attractive. And one thing about his base is it looks like the previous layer, underground volcano layer, except this time it has ice and everything in it, and it looks colder. Bond meets Blowfeld, aka Telly Savalas, who's awesome. Bond then uncovers the mind control plot. Bond is knocked out and uncovered, and Blowfeld then explains to him his plan. He wants to destroy the world economy with biological warfare, which these girls are being groomed to send out biological warfare agents, which for back then wasn't really much talked about it, but it was actually a big deal. Let's see. Then you get into Bond escapes the mechanical death trap, which if you see it, it actually looks pretty badass for 1969. Sorry about this, I'm just going off of notes and I'm just trying to figure out where the heck I am. There's an awesome ski chase where there's an awesome scene where this guy falls off there while skiing. Bond hits him, throws him off the end of the cliff, and you see this never-ending "Whoa!" It goes on forever, and then it's like bang. And so it actually felt like he actually fell off the cliff. Let's see. James, as he's getting away, meets Tracy again, which is a great scene. And this starts to become pretty big. Bond starts to contemplate his job and asks Tracy to marry him, which is huge in this thinking about James Bond. They go away, then later, after Blowfeld, there's another ski chase scene. Blowfeld actually triggers an avalanche, which was actually quite an awesome scene for that. And afterwards, Bond's knocked out and they kidnap Tracy, which then Draco helps Bond rescue her, the assault on Blofeld's base. Blofeld escapes, but Bond and Blofeld actually in this movie physically actually have an altercation, which I absolutely love. It sort of teases like how he was sort of shown in You Only Live Twice. He ran away, sort of a cowardly villain. This time, Telly Savalas fights James Bond. And I think that's the difference in the character, is that they're teasing, and then in the next movie you get the epic trilogy. Which I'll get into this later on why there is a third one, but after this, after they rescue her and everything, they get away from Blofeld, James Bond gets married. It's like, oh my god, Bond's married! What the hell? It's mentioned in later James Bond movies that he was married, but they never explain one thing. Is that the reason in the next movie, I'll get to it, James Bond acts like such a badass is because on Bond's wedding day, he stopped to take some flowers off a car. Blofeld and this lady, I can't remember her name from the movie, sort of looks like a Butchie or Rosa Klebb, comes out and she shoots at James Bond's car with a machine gun, and it kills Tracy. And to see, and actually for the first time in a Bond film, Bond shows some emotion. Where the cop comes up and is like, is everything okay? Oh yeah, my wife's fine, she's just sleeping. And it sort of goes to the cutscene. You can see Bond's very upset, which I thought was the perfect way to end that movie. Now, what is my thoughts on Her Majesty's Secret Service? It's a shame that everybody shits on this movie, because once you get to the end is the big payoff of, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened. And unless you own the book, like I haven't read the book yet, but the book to this movie is like that thick, like compared to most James Bond books are like that thick. This one's like that thick, so it's quite a substantial amount bigger, so of course the movie is going to be a lot more, but Peter Hunt's only directorial movie I think it was a good, I won't say good, let's just say it was the best fucking decision Procoli and them ever made, was scrapping him for Guy Hamilton, because some parts of this movie were sped up. It was just bad. Like, you only live twice. I'm not sure if I said this in the video. One reason I absolutely hate that video is it's completely unrealistic. In some scenes, Bond on a rooftop full of bad guys and they never hit him until he gets to the bottom. Like, this one, at least, like, you could say, okay, someone kills your fucking wife, you're coming after that son of a bitch with a vengeance and you want him dead. This film, if I had to give it a grade, I'd give it, is it better than the last film? In my opinion, it was head and shoulders story-wise above You Only Live Twice. The Bond girl in this film ends up being James Bond's wife. So is it... And this is also where you have to look at, does it advance the story? Which it does. It really does advance the story between him and Blowfeld. That absolutely pure hatred. I still think Blowfeld's one of the greatest Bond villains of all time. Like, there's nothing. A guy kills your wife, and he's this maniacal evil genius. How can you not give that guy an instant, like, one of the greatest Bond villains of all time? But no, if I give it a grade, yeah, I think a B. A solid B plus grade. Great film. If you can make it through it. I know people probably shit on me that I gave this a better grade than You Only Live Twice, but I know through watching previous Bond movies, there are Bond films, yes, I'll say this, worse than this. So, yeah, that's my review of On Her Majesty's Secret Service James Bond film number 6. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below if you want about this film or your thoughts on it. This is Music Score. Peace.